Hey there, my name is Stevie B. Very happy to be here on the official Cubase YouTube channel. And I'm excited to embark on this journey into lo-fi hip-hop creation with you. We're gonna build a track together from scratch, and I'm gonna be using nothing other than built-in Cubase plugins, virtual instruments, and samples. Everything you need to make beautiful lo-fi hip-hop is available to you within Cubase itself. And it's gonna be really easy for you to follow along with me. Along the way, I'm gonna share my songwriting process with you. I'm gonna share some valuable mixing and processing tips. We're gonna take a deep dive into sample selection, texture and ambience, chord progressions, and beat making, of course. Before we go any further here, let's take a quick listen to the finished song that we're gonna be working on together throughout the next few videos in this series. Now, one thing that I know a lot of producers have trouble with is finishing tracks. Coming up with ideas and loops is fairly straightforward, but I want to show you how I take that initial idea and transform it into a finished product. So what we're going to do here is break down this entire series into 4 videos that will outline my entire workflow from start to finish. And you can implement this production process yourself next time you sit down to write a track. And I think it'll really improve your workflow and productivity. So in today's video, we're gonna be coming up with a really simple loop. We'll establish our basic chord progression, our beat, and lay down the groundwork without getting too caught up in all the fine details. In the second video of this series, we're gonna arrange the track. We'll workshop the percussive energy a bit more, and we'll also focus in on some melodic details. So basically just fleshing out our loop idea and adding some flow within our arrangement structure. In the third video, we're gonna add all those fine details. So I'll show you how to add some texture to the track and some transition energy between the sections of our song. This will be kind of like adding the cherry on top of everything, and that'll wrap up the composition. And then lastly, the 4th video in this series is focused entirely on the mixing and mastering process. Again, we'll only be using Cubase plugins for this, so you can easily follow along. If you want to catch parts 2, 3, and 4 of this series and check out all the other helpful tutorial content on the Cubase YouTube channel, please be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you're the first to know when new content drops. So without further ado, let's get started on our track. All right, so I'm going to be making use of the free lo-fi piano instrument here for Halion, which just sounds perfect. This is just a fantastic little freebie, which I highly recommend downloading. It's got a beautiful sort of tape saturated sound and some great built-in effects, and those are really going to come in handy. It's really perfect for the style of lo-fi that we're going to dig into here. So first thing I'm going to do is just bring this tempo down. Maybe we'll try 80 to start. And let's build just a simple 4 chord progression here. I often listen to old jazz records for chord inspiration. We also have this great chord pad feature built into the instrument here, which we could use too. You can definitely build a nice progression just using these pads. To be honest with you, I'm not a keys player. I'm a guitarist actually. So I'm definitely not going to be able to just sit down here and throw down a really smooth progression by any means. Oftentimes I'll just build chords and you know, mess around till something sounds interesting. And we can certainly punch in, you know, 1 chord at a time for a progression here. So maybe we'll try something like that. So let's put down the first chord here. Maybe I'll just pick one at random. Let's start with C sharp minor 7th. Maybe I'll try second inversion of that. Add the 9th in here. So C sharp minor 9th. We could try something like F sharp minor 7th. Or we could try a slightly different color. And I could flatten the A here. And I guess that makes it an F sharp 7th suspended second. Let's see what that sounds like. Okay, I think those two work together, and yeah, I'll punch in 2 more chords here. So I want to resolve this progression so we can loop it and it feels good on repeat. So maybe for our third chord, just a straight G minor 7th here. Let's punch that in. And we can end the progression on an A major ninth. Let's see if that sounds cool. And you'll notice how I kind of flammed these chords a bit. I want things to sound kind of loose. So I'm definitely not going to quantize this MIDI, but you know, I can fix things up a little just so we're kind of gliding into the top note of the chord here gracefully. And we could do a little bit of fixing up, and let's see how it sounds. So yeah, I think something like that works really nicely. Using those extended chords gives it, you know, a bit of a nostalgic, dreamy feel. And that's definitely the vibe I'm after here for lo-fi hip hop. I'm also leaving things very open here. There's a ton of room to throw in like melodies and all that. We'll get to that a bit later. Right now, I just wanted to kind of establish a basic vibe. Okay, so next thing I'm gonna do here is pull in an instance of Groove Agent. So Cubase has a fantastic selection of kits we can pull from. I think when it comes to chill lo-fi hip hop, we really want to be careful about sample selection, especially when it comes to just, you know, finding the right sound for our kick and our snare. Let's see if we can find something interesting in our loops and samples collections here. So taking a look at Lo-Fi Dreams here, that's probably a good place to start. So a kick that sounds like this. It has a nice rounded subby feel to it. It's not too abrasive, it's not too noisy. I think something like that could work. So I'm just going to drag this sample into our C1 pad here. Okay, and I want to find a snare sample too. So let's see what we got here in terms of snares. Now something that's more of like a rim shot like this, that has the same kind of appeal as the kick. It's not abrasive at all. I think that's going to work nice. Let's drop that in here to D1. We can get a sense of what our beat's going to sound like. In terms of coming up with the beat itself, I'm taking into account how open and laid back the chord progression is here. So something like this might be like the opposite of chill, like, and it might be a little overkill. Just too many kicks in there, just sounds a little too busy. So the idea is really just to keep things spacious. And I feel like I might actually want to strip back the amount of kicks that I have. So for example, get rid of this one, maybe that one. Okay, that feels about right. I think you have to be careful about, you know, how hard you're quantizing your beats in lo-fi hip hop. So I have this soft quantize engaged here. I got my quantize strength set to 60%. So that means when I quantize it, and I'm going to quantize it to 16th notes on the grid here, means if we zoom in here, you could see that we're not locking things to the grid 100%. And I think that that's a good strategy for retaining like a bit of, you know, a human feel to it. And that's really important with lo-fi. I'm going to boost the swing up here to maybe, let's say 70, 75%. And you'll notice how the grid changes. And these kicks here that are coming in right before our snare, they're nudged forward a little bit. And you can really hear the difference in the beat now, just listening. So our beat is somewhat quantized now, but that added swing is just injecting a ton of flavor into the rhythm. So one thing that we could do really easily here in Cubase is just separate the kick and the snare sounds into two separate tracks. And this is going to be useful for mixing later on. So I'm just going to quickly do that. So you just want to select your drum pattern here, come up to MIDI, and we can dissolve part. Let's process that. And now we have our drum and snare separated into two separate Groove Agent tracks here on the bottom. So I'll just remove this one. Let's rename this kick. And this one's snare. And maybe we'll add one more thing here before we wrap this video up. I'm thinking just a simple bass line. So I'll drag another instance of Hallion. And let's try maybe this electric bass picked here. So it sounds like this. There may or may not be a better bass sound out there, but what I want to focus on right now is just writing the line and taking the same approach I did with the keys and the drums. I just want to keep things open, minimal, see what happens. Okay, I'm going to quantize that. Let's select everything. And I want everything to be roughly the same velocity. So I'm going to come over here to the right, and I'm just going to drag this down, and that kind of brings everything into relatively the same velocity. And yeah, I think this is a pretty good loop to start. Still a lot of work to do on this track before we get it into that like classic lo-fi territory, but I'm pretty stoked on what we came up with here so far. Okay, so that's gonna wrap it up for this first video. I really hope that you enjoyed that, and I hope it got you inspired. The nice thing about writing lo-fi hip hop is that you can keep things simple, open, and minimal. We don't need a lot of instruments to get things started. We've got a great loop to kick things off here. I think there's always the risk of losing momentum by getting obsessive with sound selection and processing, especially in the early stages of the writing process. So I really tried not to overthink things here. The way I work is I tend to just focus on putting simple ideas down initially to get the ball rolling. And the rest tends to come naturally as we arrange the track, which you'll see in the next video, so make sure to check that out. And again, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, guys. Cheers.